you can balance. Then there's a little pump track.
We are live, FYI, so you can keep talking. Just know that. Yeah.
There's fewer cuss words than before.
Yeah.
Damn, I was not on the thing.
And whenever you want to start, it's great, but whatever. Whatever you feel like.
Okay. Hi.
Hello.
Welcome to Biking 101, or AKA the Savvy Cyclist. So the goal of this class, we might go over that on the other side. Let me introduce first. My name is Kim Austin.
But it involves, you have to have so much experience. To take, and then there's a weekend training seminar where you don't learn what you're supposed to teach, but you learn how you teach the curriculum, and that starts on like Friday afternoon and goes through Sunday.
So you teach bike safety and
Yeah.
Okay.
Bike safety, and then once you're through with that, then you have to teach a few classes, and then you're certified as an instructor.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't remember when I got my certification, but it's been a while. I don't remember. Anyway. Okay, the goals of this class, to learn how to ride safely and legally on the roadway, to bike with confidence and in all traffic situations, know the basic principles of on-street cycling, understand that you have your control of your own safety, and understanding cycling from a driver's perspective as well. Is there anything more that you would like to learn, or
any specific
anything
specifics
that you'd like to know?
You don't have to stop at stop signs, right?
In Idaho, no.
Idaho.
In Arizona, yes.
If something sparks an idea or something that you have questions, please just let us know. We don't have to hold them to the end. We'll just discuss as we come through. Is that okay, Martin?
Yeah, that's good.
Cool. Okay. All right.
So to understand more about what makes it safe to be a bicyclist, it's important to kind of understand what are the causes of bike crashes. And kind of the basic theme of this whole course, but this next section in particular, is that we may feel helpless sometimes in regard to our safety as cyclists. Like we are at the whim or the mercy of all the vehicle drivers. I mean, how many of us feel that way? So what we want you to help learn is that you have more control over your safety than you realize. Like that a lot of the actions that we do can make you much more safer, regardless of how vehicles act around you or what they're doing. So we start with why crashes happen, and what this chart shows is that the vast majority of bike crashes are something other than vehicle crashes. So this is all the things that happen to bikes over time, including like when you're mountain biking, you go over the handlebars and end up in the emergency room or something like that. So single rider falls like that account for 50% of incidents that happen to bicyclists. Other things, hitting dogs, going over the curb, things like that, are another third. And that leaves only 17% of bike crashes that involve vehicles. And we can break that down further. And this chart is divided into two columns, at the top is when the bicyclist is at fault, and the bottom is when the motorist is at fault. And again, this is just 17% of all crashes. So for cyclists, the two things that they do wrong most frequently are they're going the wrong way facing traffic. So you're on the wrong side of the street. I think we can include being in a sidewalk as part of that. So sometimes people ride on sidewalks, and when they go on the wrong side of the road facing traffic, that accounts for 14% of crashes with vehicles. The second one is making a left turn from the right side of the road. And we'll cover appropriate ways to make a left turn a little bit later in the course. And that accounts for 11%. And we have failure to yield from a driveway or running a stop sign accounts for 8%. So in total, what cyclists do account for 47%. Cause crashes with bicyclists is they turn left in front of the cyclist or turn right in front of the cyclist. And then a few other ones, also running a stop sign, opening a car door, and failure to yield when they pull it onto a street. So that gives you an idea of how crashes are caused. And now we're going to go through what I talked about a little bit ago about how you have more control over your safety. And we express that in terms of these layers of crash protection. So the first one is to control your bike. So that eliminates that 50% and the 33% of crashes that involve only crashes that, where you slip on ice, go over the handlebars, things like that. If you learn to control your bike well, you'll eliminate a lot of those crashes, or at least learn to avoid them. The second one is don't be the cause of crash. So that goes back to the slide that we looked at where the bicyclist was at fault. So if you follow the rules and follow safe riding practices, you can avoid all those crashes. So like we saw, I think the biggest one was riding on the wrong side of the road facing traffic. So if you don't do that, that eliminates all those potential crashes. So that's what you can do as a cyclist directly. The third is how you can start to be a rider and learn to avoid what drivers do and the mistakes that they make. And the biggest part of that, we'll go into that in a lot more detail in the rest of the presentation, is to position yourself properly in the roadway. So be in the right place to be visible and safe, and you can avoid some of the causes of crashes that motorists are responsible for. So even though it would be their fault, you're learning to avoid the mistakes that they make and be a safer cyclist. And then the last two are avoiding, and this is sort of like riding skills in a way, like learning how to maneuver to avoid a crash at the last minute. And then the final version is of layers of protection are wearing a helmet or gloves or other protective equipment in case you are in a crash.
Okay, so we're going to talk about principles of traffic law. All right, so, okay, vehicular cycling. So John Forrester said it best. Bicyclists fare best when they act and are treated as drivers of vehicles, right? Bicycles on the road with vehicles, driving like a vehicle should, right? So under Arizona law, all traffic laws are applicable to bicyclists. And it's Arizona statute 28812, which is the basically bicyclists are granted all of the rights and are subject to all the duties applicable to the driver of a vehicle. Okay, questions if you have it. Is this still me?
Still,
Is it? Okay. So basically, first come, first serve, right? If you come to a stop sign first, you should get to go proceed through the stop sign first after everyone is stopped, obviously. So drivers must yield to you. You must yield to drivers, okay? Drive on the right-hand side of the road with cars, right? Not against, because then, you'll take away that percentage of crash that happens. Yield to cross traffic. So if you see a pedestrian in a crosswalk, stop, let them cross. Just like the driver of a vehicle should do the same thing. Yield when changing lanes, signal when changing lanes, just like the driver of a car, right? They have blinkers, we have arms. Speed positioning and intersection positioning, which we'll talk about in future slides. Any questions so far?
Speed positioning is just the idea that the slowest vehicles are to the furthest right,
Right.
or the outside of the roadway, and faster vehicles are to the inside. So bikes being relatively slow are
on
generally
the
to
right.
the inside versus to the left side of the road.
But again, we'll get to it. There are reasons where a bicyclist would need to pass someone, you know, or merge into that left lane to get around someone they may be going faster than. Okay. All right. Okay. I think, I don't know who this is. Martin.
Okay. So we're going to break this into a couple of sections, specific guidance. The first part is riding along the road. So this is just when you're riding in a straight line. And then there's a more extensive section about riding through intersections, which is really, riding along the road is easy, right? That's a little bit more straightforward. Riding through intersections is where the action is and where it gets a little bit trickier. And where most people feel the least comfortable as well. So if you're between intersections and riding just along the side of the road, the most important thing is just to be predictable. And imagine what you look like from the perspective of a vehicle if you're kind of riding in a straight line and they know what to expect where you're going versus if you're kind of weaving in and out. And that sounds pretty straightforward, but I think it's less obvious when you're out in the road itself. For example, if you're passing a bunch of parked cars and there's only a few cars, so like you go over all the way to the right, and then when you have to pass one of those parked cars, you veer out a little bit. It's better just to stay in a straight line and go along. So even when you have extra space to the right of you, stay in a straight line.
A lot of kids this happens a lot in neighborhoods too. You know,
Right.
where
There's
aren't
only
really
a few
bike
parked
lanes.
cars. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And so I teach a lot of kids, and kids tend to, you know, get off as quickly as possible. And I said, no, because then they have to come right back, and boom, right, the car is right there. Because I say, the driver may think that you're pulling off for some reason, and that's your house. You know what I mean? Sorry, you had a question.
Yeah, what if, like, you know, people opening a door into you? Is there any way to?
We haven't, look at that.
You mean like that?
That was a little segue into that. Thank you.
When,
Right.
you mean when that happens?
Yeah. Any way to like kind of can't see if there's a person in there, you know? And
Yeah, I
you can't
think-
get over.
I think in that case, like you, it's really hard for a person in a vehicle to see you when they're opening that door. So really the onus is kind of on you to put yourself in a position where you're not going to get hit if they do open the door. And I do the same thing. You know, I kind of look to see if there's a driver in the driver's seat. Because if there's not, then there's not much chance they're going to open the door
Right.
into you. But a lot of times you can't tell between, you know, blind spots and tinting and stuff. So the best thing is just to stay as best you can out of that door zone. Now I have heard once that in the Netherlands, as part of driver education, they train new drivers when they open the car door to do it with their right hand. So they're reaching across their body, and they get a much better view of cyclists that might be coming. Of course, the Netherlands is a different sort of cycling culture than the U.S., so that sort of thing, you know, may work.
But that's brilliant. Why? You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's kind of hard to tell sometimes. I mean, that particular image, which I'm quite certain is staged. I don't think we have to worry about the safety of that cyclist, but that's a pretty wide door, so you can see, and there's a bike lane. It looks like that.
Doesn't
so
look like
you
a
can
big
see-
car either.
Yeah, so you can see there's really a fairly good distance you need to be
Yeah.
to make sure you're clear of that. I know some cities will stripe the bike lane and the parking lane in a way that you can tell kind of where that door zone is, and the bike lane is like where you're supposed to ride. It's completely out of it, so there's no guesswork on your part as a cyclist. So how many people have heard this before, the requirement or the advice to ride as far right as possible? You've been taught that? Yeah. At some point, we all are. And in fact, in Arizona Revised Statute, it's codified into law, and it says that bicyclists must ride as close as practicable to the right-hand curb or the edge of the roadway. So that's the law, but I think that just that statement alone leaves a lot to the imagination. Like, what does it mean to be practicable? What does that word even mean? There are also 4 exceptions to that law when you don't have to be as far right. So one is when you're passing another biker or vehicle. So if you happen to be going faster than a vehicle, you can move over to the left. And when you're passing a bike that's going slower, of course, you need to move over to the left. When you're preparing to make a left turn. So we saw before that the second leading cause of bicyclist crashes with motor vehicles is making a left turn from the right-hand side of the roadway. So to make a left turn, you need to be able to get over to the left. So it's an exception to the law. The third one is to avoid conditions or objects, and we'll see a slide coming up that explains that. And the fourth is when the lane is too narrow to share side by side. And there's a slide coming up that will explain that in more detail. So as far as conditions, this is 4 images that show the right side of a roadway. And as a cyclist, if you're on any one of those roadways, you tell me what is as close to the right-hand edge as practicable in these different circumstances. So this one looks like the shoulder is really narrow. And if you go too far over, there's an alligator-filled ditch that you would ride into. So you probably don't want to go so far over that you're putting yourself in danger of getting eaten by alligators. This is fairly common. The side of the road is usually concrete and meant to convey water. And the asphalt roadway is actually a little bit, a foot or two away from the edge. And a lot of times that the dividing line between the concrete and the asphalt is not very even. So riding over that with one wheel or the other would be very unsafe. So in this case, as close to the right side of the road is not right up in this gutter pan or right up against that, because that puts you, the cyclist, in danger. Here's a nice looking bike lane, but it's full of whatever that is. Do we encounter that in Flagstaff? What do we see in bike lanes?
Everything.
Everything. This time of year. Cinders, yeah, it's probably the biggest one. So the state law doesn't require you to ride through this. You can move out into traffic in that case to avoid that condition. And here,
This is 4th Street, in my opinion, right? If anyone, yeah, totally. Keep going. Sorry.
yeah, this is not, I mean, for mountain bikes, I think you're probably fine. For road bikes, you're gonna have a little bit of trouble there. I will say in Flagstaff, I don't think we have any of these left. Although 4th Street does have, if you ride over them, they're kind of depressed. And even though your wheel wouldn't get eaten by this thing, it's quite a thing that you go through. Anyway, so that's a condition that you can avoid. And that relates to that third one, to avoid conditions or objects that are unsafe.
We have an online question.
Oh, cool.
Sherry writes, I'm going to put this on the screen for those tuning in virtually. Sherry writes, if I'm at a stoplight and I get a hand signal to go straight to cross when the light turns green, who has the right of way, me or the car turning right?
Oh,
So she's at a stoplight.
is she crossing in a crosswalk or she's in a through lane?
I'm guessing she's in the bike lane. If she's asking between her and the car that's turning right,
Yeah.
she's going straight. The car's turning right. They both get the green light. I'm guessing there's no right turn.
It's the same answer. If you're in a bike lane and the car is turning right across you, you have the right of way. The car that's turning right has to yield to you. If you're in a crosswalk, also the same. The car turning right has to yield to you.
Sure, it's bike lane. Yeah, very good. Thank you.
Now,
Thank you, Sherry.
whether that happens, Sherry, keep an eye out for a right turn signal, just in case, right?
Yeah, we have a slide.
We talk about that later on.
How to make yourself safe in that condition so you reduce the possibility that a car turns into you when it's turning right.
Okay, so narrow lanes, right? The law says that the 3-foot law, right? There needs to be 3 feet of room. If you look at this slide, you've got the vehicle roadway, the 3 feet minimum for safety, a 2-foot bicyclist bike lane, and then obviously hazards. That would be nice, right? Gutter pen, not in the gutter pen like the last slide. But anyway, so technically there's a minimum. Arizona Revised Statute, ARS 735, requires a 3-foot minimum passing distance. So in this case, we need a roadway of 14 feet, okay? That doesn't always happen, obviously, right? So there are some, so usually what happens is shared lane markings, okay? We have some of these in town. I think the right lane on San Francisco. There's some on campus. Probably Beaver.
Aspen, Beaver.
So we have some in
Birch.
town. They probably need to be restriped, repainted or whatever.
Clearly they do.
Yeah. Anyway, so shared lane markings, that's what we're talking about. This is when drivers and cars are sharing a roadway because it's too narrow to have a bike lane.
And really, the purpose of those shared lanes is in the previous slide, Kim showed you when a roadway is too narrow for a bike and a vehicle to share it side by side. And so by that fourth exception to the ARS ride right rule, you're able to take the lane. And in fact, it's safer for you in that situation to take the lane. If you try to ride right and a car passes you and stays in their lane, they're going to be passing way too close. They're going to violate that 3-foot rule. And it will be too close to you passing. The shared lane markings are put to kind of tell cyclists that it's okay to share that, to take that lane. And in fact, it shows you where to position yourself to adequately take the lane and to avoid the door zone.
Yes.
So that arrow thing, you should be right in the.
Yeah, I mean, look,
Oh,
yeah,
I
see how you
Yeah.
notice there's the arrow and the guy, right. So if the guy was riding, hugging the right side of this lane,
Yeah.
number one, there's not enough room to 3 feet, and he would be the door zone.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, that was your slide. Sorry, Martin.
Yeah, sorry.
Do you have more?
I think there's a couple more.
Okay, there you go. Go.
Yeah, so here's this may or may not be staged.
I feel like
Actually,
it's not.
it probably
Look at the
isn't. But
traffic.
like Kim mentioned South San Francisco, and I see cyclists doing this all the time on South San Francisco. And so, like, he thinks he's being potentially either legal or safe by staying on the right-hand side
Right.
of the
He's
roadway.
kind of okay. I'm on the side. I'm out of the way of drivers.
And he's ignoring where the shared lane markings. If I were painting this, I'd paint it.
Yeah,
up
in the
here.
middle,
I
more in the
think
middle.
if you're taking the lane, like you're taking the lane.
Yeah.
You're not taking 3/4 of the lane.
Right. Go big or go home, man.
Anyway, he's putting himself in two forms of jeopardy because if that car door opens, he's in the door zone, and B, if somebody is coming along here and passing him, he's getting squished between that passing car and that parked car. So, and I see people because I think it's not particularly comfortable to go out and take the lane because now you feel like cars are backing up behind you, they're maybe going faster than you are. It feels like it's unsafe, but it actually is more safe to get yourself out there and take that lane.
Well,
People
and
pass
don't
you.
they not put shared lane markings on roadways with very high speeds? Like it's
Right.
it's a roadway that a bicyclist can
Right.
not hold up traffic.
Some.
So that's what I was gonna ask.
Okay. Where?
So kids can't,
Well, okay, kids.
or elderly.
Okay, fair enough.
disability.
Yeah, and we've been using these slides for a handful of years, and in the last couple of years, shared lane markings have kind of fallen out of favor as a bicycle treatment because a lot of people are not comfortable using them. The reality is, like, we want the whole city to be potentially a bike network. So wherever you want to go, you can get there by bike and feel generally comfortable. So they're not favored, but I think there's some circumstances that we are probably, we end up using them. Like Kim said,
there's
don't
no
do it on
way.
really fast roadways.
Well, and there's some instances where there's no way that you're gonna make a wide enough road. Like you don't have space, right? To properly
Yeah,
have
usually
that 14
existing roads, yeah.
right, existing roads.
right.
New roads, absolutely.
New roads, yeah.
Right, but existing roads, and I was thinking about it, this guy, I would bet money, once he got around this car, would do that whole weaving in and out thing, because it seems like he's unsure, and so he's gonna weave in and out of these parked cars.
And is there like a typical speed you have to try to go when it's shared?
Yes, you have to go fast enough to remain upright. If you're going so slow that you topple over, you're going too slow.
I got that covered.
Sorry, that's a smart aleck answer.
That is, that's okay, but there's no real,
No.
okay.
In theory, like cyclists go at different speeds,
Right.
and you shouldn't. There should be nothing that requires you to go faster to be safer. Like you should be able. These principles should apply at any speed.
And do they teach that in driving school? Do they teach that symbol to people when they're getting their driver's test?
I think I learned it.
Did you?
I was probably the one who did it the most recent. So.
That's a great question. I don't know the answer to that. I would hope so.
I think it was on my purpose. It's always these trick questions.
Yeah, because it is. It also, we mentioned that it serves as a reminder to cyclists about where they should be, but it also is a reminder to vehicles that.
Pay attention.
Well,
Yeah, bike
and
might be
a
good.
bike, like if a vehicle is like, why are they taking the lane? Clearly, there's a shared marking.
Yeah.
I'm here. This is my spot. Stay behind me.
Yeah, there's also a sign that goes along with it that says bikes may use full lane.
But
Yeah, I mean,
like,
if you would
how
you
do
see
you
it?
see- how
This
would
is
you
this
see
is
that?
not much different than San Francisco, really. Like you feel like there's a lot of things for you to read.
Yeah, my only issue with this is that, like, I was riding down Beaver, I think it was today actually, and I was appreciating the separation of the barrier and how it was maintained, but then you weave
You
in and
have
out of barrier separation to like on the street, sharing the lane, and I'm just thinking, okay, I'm a 60% average rider person accessible here, and then suddenly it'd be a 1%er, like a very small margin of people that are willing to take the lane and share the road as you're entering downtown on Beaver or whatnot along Beaver as a pilot goes in and out. So it kind of defeats the purpose of the pilot and makes it a comfortable 1% route where you have some barrier or separation from time to time, but
Yeah.
you'll never see a kid on it. You'll never see an elderly or that 60% that we're trying to hit, which is like the average person.
Well, and even though the speed of Beaver is 25, that's the legal speed, they're going 40,
which will kill you.
which absolutely,
Right.
yeah. So I understand where you're
Right.
coming from on that. We good? Do
Yeah.
you want me to fast?
Other questions?
Oh, yeah. Any
Move
more?
on?
Okay. We're now moving to intersections. You ready? Any questions online? Are we good?
We're good.
Okay. All right, Martin.
Okay, so this is when Kim was talking about the principles of traffic law. I think the fourth one down was intersection positioning, and here's what it means basically is this is going to seem really intuitive, but imagine this is when vehicles were just invented and they had to like figure out what these rules were for people to be safe. But we make right turns from the right side of the street, we make left turns from the left side, and we go straight in the middle. Again, this sounds really, really basic and intuitive, but
I
it
mean,
gets-
obviously, right? So, yeah, keep going.
it gets more interesting. So the second part of it is that as a cyclist, you want to be in the rightmost lane that goes in the direction that you want to go. So in this example, we have two left turn lanes and you want to make a left turn. So your choice of left turn lanes will be the one that's more to the right. Does that make sense?
Wait, as a caveat, I think this person should be in the middle
Like control the lane.
to control his position. I'm not assuming it's him, the person's position, because when they move to the side, it almost invites a car to squeeze in there.
Yeah.
So lane, again, it comes back to lane positioning. So if the bicyclist is here, then they proceed and then they can change the parabola. Is that a parabola? I don't know what it is, right? I don't know. Anyway,
It's a left
so
turn.
right. So then when they get to the bike lane, they can move over and the car behind them can proceed. Does that make sense? Protect your spot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because we're as cars are wide,
Mm-hmm.
bicyclists are narrow, so we have to kind of position ourselves
Mhm.
carefully so we
Right.
don't get into trouble.
You don't want to invite someone, oh, look, there's
Right,
space.
you're right,
I'm going to
that's-
sneak in there because I want to be the first to get through the light and pass the biker, right? Or something like that.
What if you're riding with more than one person? Do you do it single file or can you be staggered? Like motorcycles?
Parallel.
You mean
Yeah.
like 2 feet, like
Yeah.
2 people, like
Yep.
right here?
You can ride side by side, and that's a way to, clearly take up that whole space. Yeah. Okay.
This kind of reminds me of that left turn you gotta make from, I think it's McConnell onto Milton. Like if you're gonna
Yeah.
try to
Yeah.
like hang there. But I mean, that intersection always, I feel comfortable, riding in that bike lane. Like if I'm coming from University Heights, I'll come over, I'll be riding on this, bike lane, then into the street because those cars are going pretty slow. But as soon as you get on Milton, I mean, yeah, I don't like being, I mean, so how do you guys feel about Milton in general? I mean, yeah.
Avoid at all costs.
Yeah, love it, right? It's like terrible.
You know what? It's great at 5 a.m.
Right.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah.
That is the time I might ride on Milton.
That's about it.
Yeah.
Good time.
Okay, so here's an image of a cyclist going straight. And again, they have multiple lanes to choose from. And going back to our principle that you should be in the rightmost lane that goes in your direction. So this person is riding in the right through lane. And we don't have an image for it, but if you were making a right turn, again, we have two lanes that make that right turn. So which lane should a cyclist be in?
The furthest to the right.
This one, right. Again, for the same principles, if a car is making this right, you're putting yourselves on the wrong, you're putting yourself between vehicles and then kind of on the wrong side.
Okay, avoiding right hooks. That was on that list of things that crash.
Most frequent car
Most
crashes.
frequent problems between a vehicle and a bike. Okay, so just basically don't ride in right turn only. Okay, so let's say this is a right turn only lane. Is there one?
Let's go back.
Okay, so if this person is going straight, okay, they should not be in the right turn only lane going straight, right? Because there's going to be a collision, right? If you're going straight, you're in the through lane. Does that make sense? But a lot of people aren't comfortable with that because, they want to be in a bike lane. The bike lanes tend to be on the right side of the road. What else did I?
Yeah, no, that's that. Yeah, and it's also that goes back to that thing where we're taught to ride on the right-hand side of the road, and so we don't realize that you shouldn't sacrifice your safety by riding in a right turn lane. You can be out in the through lane. You're still complying with the law, but you're also making yourself safe. But because we're taught to ride in the right-hand side, sometimes that leads to confusion.
So, for instance, so if this person is if this is a through or a right turn lane, the best thing to avoid a right hook is for the cyclist to move in behind the car so that they're not in that turn zone. Okay, so move in behind the right turning vehicle, and that way, and take the lane so no one can hook them. Okay, obviously be very cautious. Watch if this happens. Okay, if the car came after the person, let's say the bicyclist was there already, maybe the bicyclist should be looking for a right turn signal. Look at the person. Is the person looking for traffic? You can tell if they're going to turn right, and then be aware. Okay, because if you see it's going to happen, they might let you go, but they might not see you. Okay, a lot of times in this situation, the biker might move up a little bit so they're in the line of sight, so that the driver will see them, or move back so that they don't get hooked. Do you have anything to add?
No. How many people feel like a driver using a turn signal is a good way to tell if the driver is going to turn right?
Oh no, it may not happen.
Not always.
You're
Yeah.
absolutely right.
One doesn't
Right.
tell you anything either.
I
Right.
think this may have answered Sherry's question, maybe, I hope, or at least addressed part of it. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you have the right of way to a car turning right, but you can still make yourself safer. Like you can still use practice.
You've got it. You drive
you have that right
bike defensively,
Right.
Oh, this is me still. Okay, so avoiding a left cross, that's on that list as well. So ride where you're visible. For instance, the biker is probably not very visible. This car is watching this car to see where they're going to go. And if they're turning right, you know, usually sometimes they try and turn right at the same time and they won't see the cyclist. Okay. So be visible. Again, move forward, move behind. Kind of keep an eye on where the drive, you know, does he see you? You know what I mean? Intersections aren't that big. You can usually see, you know, I don't know. Watch your positioning with gaps in traffic. You know, if there's a whole bunch of cars, they're not going to see the biker. So I think the bike should take the lane, and then they're more visible to the vehicle, if that makes sense.
And sometimes you're riding along the side of the road and there's cars on your left. And if you see it, you're going through an intersection, you see, like in this case, there's a car waiting to make a left turn. And you realize there's a gap in the cars that are on your left-hand side that are going in your same direction. That means that there's a chance that the vehicle waiting to turn left is going to try to make that left turn in that gap that you happen to be occupying. So when you're in that gap, you need to be more cautious, like be aware that might
be very aware of who's
versus
turning left.
If there's a vehicle on your left-hand side, then that car is not going to try to turn left because that vehicle is kind of blocking it.
Questions?
And I think, you know, in both those cases, part of the principle is, I think, you know, years ago we taught kids to ride as if they were invisible. And I think what the advice that we're giving you, maybe, just when I was a kid. All right.
I heard that.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Okay, I teach no child that at all. I say light yourself up like a Christmas tree and be as visible as humanly possible.
Yes, that is the modern. That's the modern version of it. Is ride to be visible. Don't assume that you're invisible.
Don't
ride
assume.
to be visible.
Right.
Ride to make yourself visible.
Yeah.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Wow.
You call Sterling back?
That's terrible.
You never heard that
Where
before?
did you guys grow up?
Where we leave between cars.
All right, so
Left turns. Woo!
left turns. Who enjoys making left turns on busy roadways? No one does. There's actually 3 ways to make a left turn, and all of them are perfectly safe and legitimate. It really just depends on what you're comfortable doing, and it can change from circumstance to circumstance. So this illustrates the 3 different varieties. This line shows a bicyclist making a left turn as a vehicle. So just like a vehicle, you get into the left turn lane when it's clear and safe to proceed, you make your left turn. The second way is to stay on the right side of the road, go all the way across to the far crosswalk, and then position yourself and wait for the walk signal to come on or the green light to come on, and you can proceed across. And then when you're on the far side, presumably you get back in the bike lane or the lane of travel and away you go.
Or if there's a bike lane, put yourself in the bike lane going the other direction.
Did you say what this was?
Box turn.
Yes, exactly. How did you know that?
It makes sense. And it's right now it's behind your shoulder, but yeah, no, because you went like that and then created a box. But
Yeah, that's
Nice
exactly
job.
what it's called. Good job.
You get
Take an extra
a
one.
light.
Is the person that's trying to be a pedestrian, are they off their bike? Is that
They're
the-
walking
okay.
as they're crossing
Okay.
as a pedestrian. You had a question?
Which, I mean, is that necessary to actually get off your bike?
There's a slide coming.
Okay, all right. Yeah.
Just hold that thought. Just stick it in your pocket for a second.
It could be like a whole class. Anyway, yeah, so this one, like you ride to the far side, and if there's a bike lane, that works out great. In this situation, they're stopping in front of traffic, and they're literally, like you go to the spot and you turn your bike 45 degrees to face the other way. The one trick with doing this maneuver is if you're in a traffic signal and you kind of get caught between lights, like you don't want to be in the middle of making your turn when the light turns green, unless you have a bike lane. So you have to be a little bit cautious about that. But since this is on a really busy roadway, this is not particularly comfortable for a lot of cyclists. These are perfectly legitimate ways to do that. In fact, I've ridden for years up 4th Street, and then I turn left on Huntington. And if I go early in the morning, there's really not much traffic. It's pretty easy to make that left turn. If I go later, there's just like a line of cars. I'm not even going to try to get across this, and so I'll go to the far side of the light and then go across that way. So it's nice to have those options.
Same thing if you're on the Route 66 Foots Trail and you're going toward the mall, and then you have to go north on 4th Street. You can cross as a pedestrian until you get to the bike lane going on 4th, and then just toot, 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 and then you're in the bike lane, and off you go when the light changes.
So now we've got a couple of other kind of situations that you may encounter making. These are left turns as a vehicle. So the first one is when it's just a 2-lane road, there isn't a dedicated left turn. As a cyclist, you move over from the right-hand side of the lane to the left-hand side of the lane, or if you're taking the lane from the middle, more toward the left. The star indicates where you look behind you to make sure that it's safe to go over.
I would start looking back here personally.
Yeah. The second one is when you have to cross multiple lanes of travel, and this is
no way I'm
Right?
yeah, you just skip this. Nobody, yeah. Few people enjoy doing this, but in theory, what you would do is every movement you look behind to make sure that it's clear. Move over into this lane. Look behind to make sure that it's clear in this lane. Move over and move over. That's a lot of
5 a.m.
movements.
at Milton. This is where you can do this? No,
Yeah,
just kidding.
yeah. And there's in the longer course that we've taught infrequently, but one of the skills as a cyclist that you need to learn is when you look over your left shoulder, what happens if you're riding straight, you look left and your bike automatically goes. So like learning not to do that is a real skill. I think it's legitimate to like drop one hand from your handlebars, and then it makes it kind of easier to do that.
What about a mirror?
Mirrors are great. Yeah. Do you guys use mirrors?
I need to
Should have
get
had mirrors here.
Yeah.
Right?
My only question would be, would that be enough? Would you trust that if you?
No, because I don't trust it in my car either.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
look and look, yeah.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think I would look. Do you have a mirror?
You know, you're going to laugh. I have a mirror that goes on my arm,
Wow.
right? So because
That's
the
cool.
whole so I have it, and then I can position it so that I can see. I know that's
Wow.
Is that weird?
I haven't seen
Is that weird?
Like, I thought I'd seen everything.
so then if I know, oh my gosh, there's a whole bunch of cars coming because I can see them, then you're extra careful, not if you're like, oh, I don't see many people, but you're still looking over your shoulder at some point, you know what I mean? But yeah, I have an arm one.
So some of the basic principles, and this applies to all left turns, but Kim said it before, start well in advance. So the further you can look back to see what the traffic situation is, the better off you are. If it's clear generally, or if there's a lot of traffic. Look back, that's what the star is before you change lanes, make sure it's clear. We talked about learning not to swerve when you look. And then the final one, like we all know the hand signals. And really the intent of the hand signals is to signal what your intentions are to the driver. And so whatever, like you don't have to like just make a very basic hand signal. You can be more animated, like I'm going this way.
Oh,
If their
absolutely.
windows open, you can talk to them. The important thing is that they know what you're doing, so you're predictable in that way. And
All
then
right.
the final version, and we've just added these to a couple of streets along Butler. Purple shows what we saw in the previous slide, kind of a multi-step left turn. These little boxes are sometimes painted in the roadway to help you make that box turn. Actually, it's kind of like the Arthur Murray method of, I don't know, maybe that's an old reference also.
Dancing.
Dancing. Yeah.
There it is.
All right, make a note for next year. We're going to update our references
Seriously,
to something in this century.
Something
Yeah.
in this century.
All right. All right. So this shows you where to position yourself when you make that box turn on the far side of the roadway. And it's also a good reminder to drivers that cyclists, they may not know exactly what cyclists use that for, but they know that cyclists are going to are going to be present.
No,
in this
I
space.
disagree. I
You
don't
think
think
they
they
know?
know. I don't think they have a clue.
Okay.
Only because I've been yelled at when I was in one, and I was thinking, I'm in a green box. No, they were not happy, but that's okay.
And we don't have any of
The
those.
majority of people, I think, are nice.
We don't have any of those in Flag though, right?
We do.
We do.
A couple intersections along
Mhm.
Butler.
We do.
Yeah.
Haven't ridden them
That's okay.
Give it a try. Let us know.
Yeah.
Um,
Questions? Any? How are we doing?
Good.
Okay. Right? Okay. Okay.
Oh, and this is kind of as wrap up. If you're on a one-way street, and again, San Francisco is a good example. You don't have to stay in the right-hand lane. You can move into the left lane to make that left turn. In fact, you should. You shouldn't make
Yeah.
the left turn from the right-hand lane.
Just like a car shouldn't do that either.
Right.
Right.
Okay. All right. So, right turns, just to wrap up. Watch for cyclists in advance of the turn. Avoid overtaking and turning in front. So this is as a vehicle, right? You want to make sure they don't realize how fast bicyclists can travel. You know, obviously they're way faster than a pedestrian. So as a driver, watch. If you pass someone, be aware that they may be coming up faster than you plan. So keep an eye on them, and so you can avoid turning right in front of them. Turn right on red. Look that left, right, left for bicyclists and pedestrians from both sides, because they may not be riding on the correct side of the roadway. Especially, let's say, the Foots Trail that hugs 180. You know what I mean? So if you're a driver and you're going into town, you tend to be looking to the left for cars for an entrance. There may be a bicyclist coming the other way. So, use that left, right, left to keep an eye on where bicyclists, because they can come from anywhere. And also, sidewalks. Watch sidewalks. You never know when they're going to be on a sidewalk.
And so near my mom's house in California, it's a narrow road. And so but there's also a bike path. So if you want to turn right as a car, do you stay in the lane and not scooch over into that bike path?
You mean like a lane alongside the?
Yeah, like, so
On
here's the
outside.
main lane, and then
Yeah.
there's also a bike path, but it's a
Yeah.
narrow road. And so there's no turn lane for right-hand turns. As a car, do you cross over into that bike path and make your turn? Or do you have to just wait it out here and then, check the bike path for nobody coming, and then the bike lane for nobody coming, and then turn?
I think California is one of the few states where I can't remember if it's mandatory or just allowed, where the vehicle making a right would use the bike lane to make that, so they get into the
You
bike
can,
lane to make
okay.
that right. Yeah, you can.
Okay.
I think in a way it's not a bad practice, because it almost eliminates the possibility of getting a right hook.
Unless you're not watching for a bike coming up behind you.
Right. Yeah. The danger, the conflict point would be when the vehicle moves into the bike lane, and if there's a cyclist already there. But once they're in that lane, then a cyclist can't really go past them, so they have to end up behind them, and there's no chance of making having a right hook at that intersection. I think most other states don't say that. Arizona doesn't say that. In fact, Arizona says that you can't.
You don't
You're
get
not supposed to do that. Yeah, but I'm not sure that it's not a bad practice for cars to do. In fact, if you notice in Flagstaff, we put skip striping in the last 100 feet or so of a bike lane at an intersection. It's kind of for that purpose, but it's really not clear that you can do that you're supposed to do that in state law.
Because Butler's a great example. I mean, there's so many turns, like up
Yeah.
San Francisco and everything, and there's a dedicated bike lane. So you don't turn into that. You don't use that as your turn. You stay into your lane. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
And then you yield to bikes that are there.
Right.
So I did want to mention the League of American Bicycles has a course, and it's drivers like what drivers should anticipate like where bikers are going to be as a driver of a vehicle. They have a whole course on that. And so we just tried to incorporate some of those principles. You know, this is what you should do as a cyclist. This is what you should do as a driver to avoid all of those. Okay, sorry. All right. Okay, I don't remember. Bike lanes and other facilities. Here you go.
So we've just gone through a whole bunch of riding practices and where you should be and how you should turn and all that kind of stuff. And we really haven't talked about like bike lanes and things like that. But if you think back to everything that we've talked about, how does the presence of bike lanes change anything that we've talked about so far? Lane positioning, making turns, anything like that?
Well, if there's a bike lane and you want to make a left-hand turn, you can't stay in the bike lane. You have to take control of the lanes that you can make a left-hand turn safely.
Yep, exactly. So really the bike lane doesn't change any of those principles.
Unless you're going straight. It's good if you're going straight.
It's great if you're going straight, exactly, you're right. Otherwise, like you would do all the same things if there's a bike lane there or not. So if you need to leave the bike lane for any reason, the bike lane has debris in it, you need to make a left turn, there's a parked car in it, leave the bike lane.
I think
You're not
that's
required to ride in
I
it.
think that's part of the problem is that they don't bicyclists think they have to stay in the bike lane at all times. Do you know what I mean? And they don't. And that's kind of a principle, you know, that's good to know that you don't have to stay in the bike lane.
You feel safer to stay there.
Well, we kind of condensed this, but we had this slide. Remember the safety slide? You know, you're standing on the edge of a cliff, you know, how safe do you feel? You know, it's all about perception of safety, right? If you feel safer, it doesn't necessarily mean you are safer. It's how you feel and perceive yourself, the safety of yourself. Sorry, go Mark.
Yeah, so all the things we learned about lane positioning don't change. You have to leave the bike lane to make a left turn, to stay out of the door zone, to avoid right hooks. All those things are perfectly legitimate reasons to leave the bike lane. And the last one I think is important. If you are in a bike lane and pull up alongside of a bus or a truck and they happen to be turning right, they will never be able to see you as a cyclist. So just avoid putting yourself in that situation. Protected bike lanes. This is on Beaver Street. And so again, I think the principles are the same. One of the concerns with some of the bike lanes is it makes it more difficult to move over to the left when you need to. So in a lot of cases, depending on where those curbs are located, it may not be possible to make a left turn from inside that protected bike lane. So you either have to find the next place where you can make a left turn or get outside of it into the lane and kind of prepare for your left turn that way. And then of course, if there's debris or garbage cans or other things in that lane, you don't really have a good option to move out of it. They're great, they make people feel comfortable, but you have to be a little bit cautious riding in them and be kind of aware of those limitations.
Okay, sidewalks. Is it legal to ride a bicycle on the sidewalk in Flagstaff? No?
Shouldn't be.
Any other votes?
Thoughts?
I think like downtown, it's not legal, but
Like on Milton, would it be?
yeah, well, that's the thing, because that was gonna be my follow-up, and then it kind of just never happened. But I mean, you know, if I did make that left turn on the Milton, you know, I always just get on I ride as fast as I can, and I kind of look behind me, but then if I see a bunch of people coming, I just jet over to the sidewalk. Yeah, but then I end up regretting it because I have to slow down. I don't know.
Question?
It's a mixed bag.
Yeah, it's a mixed bag. Yeah.
We have a question, I think.
Sherry writes, hopefully, how about on Cedar Hill?
Yes, there it is. Except we're posted. Oh, hang on, and downtown, right? This is downtown. There it is.
And
So-
Beaver and San Francisco. on the south side.
Right. So, yes. Now, Cedar Hill, yes. That one is a little tricky. Yeah, I actually rode Cedar Hill the other day as a cyclist, and it was very windy, and I happened to time it where all the school buses were going from MEMS to Flag High, and I was riding thinking, why aren't I on the sidewalk? Like just right, there's just a section. So yes, I understand that one. But generally, and here we go. Let's move to the next slide because there's a caveat to that. So studies have found that actually riding on the sidewalk increases the risk of a crash. So in general, bikes do belong on the roadway. There are some exceptions, obviously, but as a matter of fact, it's 2 to 9 times as high because drivers aren't looking on the sidewalk for bikes, and they don't anticipate how fast a biker is riding on the sidewalk versus a pedestrian. Sorry.
Yeah, you got slides that show all that.
What?
There's slides coming up.
Okay, sorry. Oh, sidewalks. There we go. I jumped the gun. Okay, sorry. Oh, there we go. Okay. So here's bikers on the sidewalk and bikers on the roadway. So here's a car. And again, they're looking for other cars, right? They're looking for other cars, but they're not necessarily looking for bikes on the sidewalk, bikers on the sidewalk. So there may be, a potential for a crash.
Yeah, like in this, if they're looking for a gap in traffic to be able to pull out, this kind of shows where their attention is directed. So they may see you on the sidewalk. They're more likely looking for vehicles in the lane.
And
So
they're
they may not
probably
see you.
not looking at this.
Yeah, they will
person.
never look at that
No, they will
direction.
not look at that one.
Now, with protected intersections, that basically solves this problem because there's no right and red. And so pedestrians and cyclists are out ahead of the car and get the green light first.
Yeah.
So I would say this isn't necessarily our fault as cyclists or pedestrians. This is the designer's fault, the engineers, because they're only accommodating cars and their desire to move.
There you go. Mm-hmm.
And we have a bunch of protected intersections in the pipeline for the city, which is great.
And it's really the same for
Yeah.
for left turns. You can see where.
Looking for breaks in traffic. And yeah, probably sees this one, probably not looking at that one.
They don't even have the bike that's there isn't even in the line of sight according to that demonstration,
Yeah, and that gets kind of back to the what Kim even started with, which is that bicyclists fare best when they act like drivers of vehicles. So when you're like in a place where a car is looking for other cars, you're more likely to be seen. So your lane positioning again is kind of important.
And why is that? Because it's designed for cars. So if you act like a car, you're safe. That's the problem. But
Right.
the thing is, to ask us to act like cars is not for everybody. Or
Right.
even close
No,
to
it's not, and not everyone.
Right.
What percentage?
1%.
The 1%,
And there's like a 60%, which will basically use
Right.
those walkways,
which will be on the sidewalk.
which looks just like the sidewalks.
Mhm.
And now we'll tell you the secret about riding on sidewalks. Adam, cut the camera. Off record. And that is these threats are when there are side streets and driveways. So like on the Cedar Hill example that somebody brought up, there are very few side streets or driveways. So there's much less risk when you're not crossing side streets and driveways. We're going to cover foot trails here in the next slide. The Route 66 foot trail is kind of the same. There are no driveways that come out to it. There's a couple of side streets, but for the most part, you don't have that risk of cars crossing your path. And so the risk is much, much less in those cases. Does that make sense?
Especially compared to the one on
Yeah.
180.
Yeah, the one on 180 has lots of side streets and they're not great visibility. So
And a lot of kids ride that road, ride that foot trail.
People walk in.
Yeah, there's a lot of traffic, pedestrians and cyclists on that. So it's very important, both as a pedestrian, as a cyclist, and a vehicle. Like, watch out, just pay attention to your surroundings.
Yeah, and so foot's kind of fall into that same category. Like we have a lot of trails that just go through the woods or along through canyons or whatever, and those are great, right? There's not a car in sight. But we also have a bunch that go along busy roadways, and while they're really nice to kind of get you out of traffic, the same principles applies when you're on a sidewalk. And as Kim showed you in her slides, that the risk is even higher when you're going kind of against traffic, because a vehicle turning right is never going to see you. So by all means, use the foot trails, but kind of keep those things in mind, that you may not be as visible as you would hope to be when you come to intersections. So kind of ride cautiously and appropriately.
And know that Flagstaff is working on trying to increase the bikeway system so that there are trails and places that you can get to, and you don't have to ride on the roadway, kind of bikeways and, shared just pathways that are, get you from one side of town to the other, north, south, east, west, kind of a thing.
And some countries have figured out how to make that design work for 50 years or so. And we're just catching up, but we're getting there.
Catching up. We're thinking about it.
Yes, you're thinking about it.
We're thinking about moving towards catching
Well,
up.
it's interesting, the culture, though. The culture. When I was in Switzerland, I was such a tourist, but in a funny way. I was walking, across on a crosswalk, and I noticed that there was a bike lane and a car lane and a bike lane and a car lane. And the bikers and the drivers just went together, and everyone expected everyone to be there, and everyone did their thing. So here I am walking through the intersection, and I'm like, no way. And I'm pulling out my phone and I'm taking pictures and totally embarrassing my child, because I thought, that is so cool that
Wow.
everyone is together. And then I thought,
And learn to get
wow.
along.
And they get along and it works. And would I like to be the one sandwich between two cars? Right? In that one, I'm like, I don't know. Anyway, sorry. That's you.
Oh, so when you're using the foot trails, all we ask is that you observe a few basic courtesies. Etiquette. So yield to pedestrians and other trail users. Keep your speed under control. So by all means, go as fast as you want if there's nobody around or the conditions are okay. But if you're like in a crowded area downtown, then use an appropriate speed. All users stay right. And if you need to pass somebody, you can move away from the right. You can go around somebody, but give them an audible signal.
So here's the trouble with audible signals. So many people have earphones in and are
Yes.
listening. So you could be like on
Yeah.
your right, and then you scared of them. They
No, you do. And then they always jump
jump into
you, never the other way, right? That's what, if you're a cyclist, or, I don't know, I think everyone, if you have to have music, just keep one in and not
Put
both.
it on your bike. I don't
Right?
put it in my ear. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's just my thing. So yeah, there's etiquette for pedestrians and other people using trails too.
I feel like this is also kind of a cultural thing as well, in a way. I mean, not like, culture that with a capital C, but like bike culture, trail culture. Because I know, like in other countries, if you're riding along a pathway, everybody has a bell. Like it's almost mandatory that people have
Maybe an
bells.
air horn.
And so when
I have a
Yeah.
little,
Yeah.
So when you
Yeah.
ring a bell, pedestrians automatically move over to the right. And here, if you ring a bell, people jump, they scatter. So it's a different kind of expectation.
I don't take it for granted that they can hear me. If they haven't
Yeah.
made
yeah.
if they haven't stepped over, if they haven't turned, I just assume they have not heard me.
Yeah. I think the answer is we just do.
Right. And then crosswalks. Here we go. So follow the pedestrian signal at signalized intersections. Stop, yield. Others slow in advance, prepare to yield or stop. For other pedestrians that are crossing, watch for turning vehicles, you know, all sorts of interactions and turning right in front of you, turning left in front of you, turning right on your left. Like, just keep paying attention at crosswalks, stop for pedestrians. There you go. But there's more. Hold that thought. There's thoughts. Is it legal for a bicyclist to ride through a crosswalk? Okay. What do you think? Ride
We saw the
your
image
bike.
before where the cyclist had dismounted.
Yeah.
Where this cyclist is dismounted and is walking through their bike through a crosswalk. So the question is it legal? Can you stay on your bike and ride?
So
through
like
the
if you're on the Route 66 trail or Foots Trail riding toward the mall, there are several roadways that you have to cross. Do you get off your bike and walk, or can you stay on your bike and ride?
I think it's legal to ride through it unless it's posted otherwise.
You don't think
I
so?
don't think it's illegal. I think it's
No?
etiquette, but I don't think it's illegal.
I think it's illegal.
Is it 5 a.m.?
It actually is legal. It is legal. Yes.
That's great.
And it was this case, Maxwell versus Gossett, that went to the Arizona Supreme Court in the 1980s.
So you can ride through it.
You can. Now, I don't know if we have a slide.
The problem, I don't think we do.
I think we took it out, but go ahead.
Yeah, the problem with, this kind of being decided by the Supreme Court is we don't really have good guidance through state law on what is safe behavior going through a crosswalk as a bicyclist. What state law would say for pedestrians is that as a pedestrian, you can't go into the crosswalk or enter the crosswalk or step off the curb and put yourself in danger. So in other words, you can't walk into the street when there are vehicles coming that don't have a good
Like
opportunity
intentionally.
to stop for you, right? However, once you are in a crosswalk, then vehicles are required by law to yield to you. So let's apply that same principle to bicyclists, that you can't ride into a crosswalk, from the sidewalk or from the foots trail into the crosswalk in the street and put yourself in danger. But once you're in there, then vehicles yield to you. So the point is that you don't have to dismount. You probably should slow down.
So you're
But you need to make sure that you're entering that street safely when you leave the curb as a cyclist. That's on you. Once you're in that crosswalk, then vehicles should yield to you. Some states have codified that they give pedestrians and bicyclists the same rights and responsibilities. And I think there's a term for it. It's like shared yielding behavior or something, where like you as a pedestrian, you as a bicyclist, exercise caution before you enter the street. Make sure that you're not going to get hit. And then once you're in the street, the vehicles have to exercise caution not to hit you. They yield to you.
I would also say, again, you don't have to get off your bike, but, is there someone wanting to turn in a right turn lane that is right there? Do they see you? Are they paying attention? Is there someone across going to turn left in front of you? Watch out for all of these situations and protect yourself. Be defensive, so you're not putting yourself into danger.
Does that help?
So we learned one thing today.
Right at 5 a.m. Yeah.
Anything goes, yeah.
Okay, e-bikes.
Who's an e-bike?
Uh,
E-bikes.
I don't.
You
You
don't.
don't have, does anyone in here have an e-bike?
No, ma'am.
No, okay. Well, someone on
We have one.
Facebook Live might have an e-bike, so here you go. This is you. Oh, you want me to say it? Okay.
E-bikes are just like bikes.
Sherry says I do.
Oh, okay. Sherry,
That's for
Okay.
you.
this is for you. Yes,
So the state defines e-bikes in three classes.
3 classes. Mhm.
Class 1 and 2 go up to 20 miles per hour. The motor assists up to 20 miles per hour. In class 3, the motor assists up to 28 miles per hour. They're supposed to be clearly labeled. Like, do you know? Like,
Yeah,
okay,
they're right
yeah,
on the,
yeah,
the
yeah.
C2 usually.
So
Just
people know what they're buying and what they have. City code allows class 1, 2, and 3 in bike lanes. Class 1 and 2 on Foots trails, except for the Arizona
Except-
Trail and the Nate Avery Trail in Buffalo Park, and does not allow them on sidewalks. So that if you have an e-bike versus an acoustic bike, there's a difference in whether you can ride in the sidewalk or not. What do we call them? Analog bike.
It goes so loud, it's humming like a guitar.
Does Sherry have anything that she wants to ask?
Sherry said that she rides both, but Sherry, if you have any questions, please join in. And Scott writes, "Keep your toys off the road."
Now, I don't know if you know, I mean, everyone knows where Buffalo Park is, but does everyone know where the Arizona Trail runs through town? Okay, so it comes off of K. Martin. I'm going to mess this up, I think, but it comes off of McMillan Mesa, down Ponderosa Parkway by the Starbucks, crosses Route 66, and it goes along Ponderosa Parkway under the tunnel of Butler, Huntington, that whole big, massive intersection. It goes under the tunnel, and then it comes out on the opposite side of the road, Butler and then it goes to the Taco Bell at the corner by Sam's Club, and then it turns left, and then it heads down that road into the forest again. So it has to go from forest to forest, but it has to cut there. So technically, there's a section where you're not supposed to have, which is frustrating if you're commuting, right? On your e-bike.
What would an e-bike person do? Walk,
Just ride it.
right?
Turn it off, right?
Can't you ride on
I
the
don't know,
road?
Does anybody know
On the
that?
roadway, right?
That's what we do. We do
Yeah.
like tours up to Buffalo Park, so we will take the road up towards there.
Yeah,
Take a look.
Because they're allowed on the roadway. This is just the Foots Trail. So
That's a really good question. If you have an e-bike and you just don't have it turned on, does that count as not an e-bike?
An acoustic bike now?
I'm gonna guess not.
You really gonna get in trouble, right? I don't know. I mean,
It's
I mean, I
usually
shouldn't be
just
saying this
those,
here. Oh,
like,
you run
trailhead
right?
guys.
Yeah. It's one thing for things to be on the book. It's another thing for enforcement to actually follow through.
That's right.
It's the pretty low hanging.
There's a third thing. It's like you're attracting attention to yourself. Like if you're going 28 miles per hour
Right.
Yeah.
through Buffalo Park
Right.
versus
yeah,
Really fast. Through there, yeah.
being more careful.
yeah. I mean, if you're careful, you're following the rules. I don't think it's, anyone's gonna pull you over.
They're
And
becoming a lot more common. I mean, do you notice them more often?
everywhere.
Yeah, like
I
almost
feel
every
like
day.
I'm in the minority that I don't have one.
Out here, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, what are the two biggest detriments, in terms of environmental conditions in Flagstaff to riding a bike? We all know what these are. What both these are.
Say the question again?
The two biggest detriments to riding a bike.
Yeah,
Well, in winter, yeah. How about summer?
that heat.
Hills,
Oh.
wind.
When-
What do e-bikes not care about? Hills or wind?
True.
So it's they're great at encouraging people to ride. Like the friends I have with e-bikes, when they wake up in the morning, they never think about
No, it
they're gonna
encourages
drive or
it
ride, they
encourages
just-
a lot
ride,
of people who would not ride. Yes, they don't ever think about that. When I look outside or it says red flag wind day, I'm like,
Go 1 mile and I feel like 10.
oh, right. Or sometimes it's kind of scary, frankly, if you're in an open area and you are riding on the roadway and it's coming sideways at you and you're just struggling to be predictable and staying straight in your bike lane. And so on a really, really windy day, it can be kind of scary.
Just walk it.
The nice thing about e-bikes too, I feel like the people that are really coming into the culture through this are folks that are maybe not the 1% that feel comfortable on the road, but are maybe more hesitant riders who maybe need that additional assist. And so it's just interesting that this whole I feel like e-bikes are really going to help bridge the gap.
Yeah, they have that potential. So let's make a pact between us. Like who among us is going to be the last to get an e-bike?
Me?
No
It-
No way.
I have to say, last year the
You
wind.
feel most at danger.
I feel like-
Yeah,
Because
right?
the more you
I
work.
work around. I gotta stay away.
Are you tempted?
You know, there's some days where I'm like, I could do it. Like I could just get an e-bike, but then for the type of riding I do, it's too much weight. But like for commuting, I would love an e-bike. Just I wake up, have to go to work at 9. It's like, all right, throttle all the way there. Rather
It's
than,
fun.
I got late. But even like those scooters, the electric scooters, those things, I don't know how fast they really go, but they look pretty
Oh,
fast.
that's a
They
whole
go.
nother,
Yeah.
a whole nother 3-hour
Yeah.
talk about e-scooters that we don't want to talk about. No, I was thinking last year, it seemed like it was windy from March to August, like really windy. And it made me start thinking, wow, is this the way climate change is? Are we now super windy now? We're not out in Donny Park. It was just windy. I was like,
Joey Park's now in here.
right. I was thinking, wow, this is terrible. I don't know. It made me start thinking about it. But anyway, all right. So conclusion. Oh, here we go. No, we actually have key points. Okay. Oh, bicyclists. Okay, so bicyclists fare best when they act like vehicles, right? And they follow the rules of the road. They know where to position themselves in the lane to protect themselves. Okay, be predictable. Pay close attention to intersections and driveways, and avoid riding on sidewalks if possible. I know there are some exceptions, but anyway. And then, so, right, the benefits: to be safe and legal, set a good example, right? Be an ambassador for the cycling community, and be confident. Know where you're supposed to be in the lane and protect yourself. There you go. Any questions? Comments?
So do they do a lot of rides, like group rides because when bikes are more visible in a town, I think it teaches people to be more aware of them. So
Safety in numbers, huh?
sort of until those accidents that have driven right
Right,
into
right,
groups of
right.
people, but, you
Right.
know, but does Bike Shop ever think about, something like that, about having more, group rides and, to just make biking just more visible?
There used to be pre-COVID. I knew there was like an every Tuesday.
Well, I know
after
Bike
work.
Rev does like a,
I was gonna say a lot of the local shops were trying to get like group tours going on. So like Saturday mornings, get a bunch of people on e-bikes, take them out to Buffalo or just around Foots trails and stuff. I know Bike Rev does one. They're all kind of moving into trail building rather than group rides. They still do both, but it's just because the conditions of the trails right now, they're kind of getting all their guys out on there rather than doing the group ride scene. From what I've seen.
I will give a plug for next week. We are having 2 rides, group rides, family rides. One, they're called Kidical Mass rides.
oh yeah,
Yeah, we stop at stop signs. We obey laws. We don't blow through things, but and there's ice cream,
And you eat ice cream. yeah.
and you eat ice cream after. So Tuesday the 16th at Cyclist around 4 to 5, and the 17th at Thomas School from same 4 to 5. Kids and families out riding. You should see the videos that they take when you see 40 or 50 kids and people on a bike. Bike to School Day is on Tuesday the 16th. And Cyclist usually has a massive amount.
They do.
And the fun thing at Cyclist is a lot of, maybe I shouldn't say this, but last year, I'm going to go with last year, they called in some firefighters and they closed off the intersection at Fremont. And they let all the kids and all the parents, there was probably 75 of us, ride through that intersection, ride down the Foots Trail. And we got breakfast at the Peaks. Breakfast burritos even.
There you go.
I know, it was pretty great.
There's a correlation between like the more people see bikes out on the road, like the more you get used to them and the more you come to expect them. Pedestrians as well. There's positive safety correlation to that. Like when drivers are more aware of bikes or have an expectation that they may see bikes or peds, they're more cautious.
Right.
So the question becomes, how do we get more people out riding and walking to realize those safety benefits?
Because I see a handful.
That is the question.
Oh, is it a question? We're still trying to figure out. If you build it, they will come.
Right,
You know, if you build quality, separated infrastructure, and you maintain it, and build safe intersections where you don't have to be a car to get through it.
Yeah.
You know, or act like a car, then you'll see ample amounts. But I've hosted a few bike rides recently in the last couple of months for the community. And we had a group of 15 of us ride from NAU to Heritage Square to Bushmaster. And we went along the 66 foot. And at times we had a single file because there were people coming in the other direction. And 15 people single file on the foots is quite an impact.
Yeah.
That's super
It was
cool.
Super cool.
Yeah.
And we had music. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately there's only so many 1%ers who are willing to ride in these conditions that like we really just need to keep pushing for better infrastructure.
But I think if people like you and bike shops and stuff are leading them, I think a whole lot more people would feel comfortable.
Well,
You know,
and
they're gonna-
if the infrastructure supports it.
Right.
So yes, encouraging people to get out, of course, but if you have that infrastructure, then it just only helps.
Like we're
build,
riding up
right.
4th Street,
Mhm.
which I thought was a good idea. And we thought we would take a lane because there's 5 lanes and it's not utilized. But cars are going 40 miles an hour and we did not feel safe. And we thought we were in the bike lane and we had kids with us. And we literally were, the kids and the families ended up like diverting into the neighborhood to get to Bushmaster because I don't blame them. But like, as like the front of the pack, I was like, this is sketch and this is really dangerous. And this is 4th Street, this is one of the main corridors. And there's not even sidewalk on the east side of the street. It was embarrassing,
So I think that, like we talked about, like John Forrester, and he was, I don't know if he's still alive or not anymore. He was older, but he was a hardcore vehicular cyclist. And you just saw the quote from him that bikes fare best when they're acting treated like drivers of motor vehicles. And I think like Kim mentioned that we used to have a slide on the difference between being comfortable and being safe. And they're not always the same thing, but a lot of times when we're uncomfortable, like it feels like it's because we feel like it's unsafe, and it doesn't necessarily. And one thing that they taught us throughout the course, like through the LCI, is that like you can learn to be safe regardless of what the infrastructure is. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean that you're going to be comfortable, and we really like we want people to be safe. That's why we teach this class. Like we want you to have responsibility for safety, and comfort kind of comes after that. Like we can't force you or train you to be comfortable like that. You're kind of on your own for that. But knowing that you're riding safely is one element of being comfortable. So I guess the point is like we have to be kind of clear. Like in order to attract riders, our infrastructure has to be comfortable. If it's safe, it's too low of a bar. Because a good rider can be safe under most infrastructure conditions.
4th Street.
Right.
Including 4th Street. Yeah. And like bike lanes, I think are a good example of that. Like bike lanes are relatively safe. Like we did not see on that list of the cause of crashes, vehicles swerving into the bike lane and hitting cyclists. The problem is that like the fear of that happening, it makes you really uncomfortable, like having cars that close to you. And then a lot of times when that does happen, those are fairly serious crashes. Like those aren't
like
fender
as a
benders.
rider, how many times does it take for you to like get almost hit into before you're like, I'm not doing this again? So it almost acts as a natural filter to get cyclists out of their bikes and into their cars.
And if you ride enough and long enough, you will encounter some situation like
Bunting.
Adam said, where you've almost been hit or you've been hit or whatever, and it changes your perspective, and it makes you think, I don't know, maybe I'm going to ride on the sidewalk from now on because I'm too scared to ride on the roadway, or maybe I'm not going to ride anymore because drivers aren't paying attention or the infrastructure isn't there, you know, where I have to ride on the road with a vehicle rather than have my own superhighway that's only for bicycles. I don't know. You just, it does change your perspective a little bit. If you've been riding long enough, you know, yelled at enough, almost hit enough, right? It happens if you're out on the road long enough, and it happens, unfortunately. I will caution group rides. Please stop at stoplights and obey the laws. Just because you're in a group, it's okay to get separated. You can catch back up,
Right.
or the group can wait for you. Group rides are good, but
On a
scares
positive
me.
note, to Barton's comments earlier that the city is starting to wake up and like get on board.
Absolutely.
They are. And the council's given clear direction to flip the priorities and change policy and adjust the code. The community has spoken up and engaged and come through in ample amounts of surveys and public comment opportunities. And, Martin and I will joke and say, it's time to act. It's not time to do any more surveys or talk. It's now time. It's now the ball's in the city's court to now take action. And the city is, it might not be as fast as we might want it to be, but there are some major steps taking place right now that are really going to set the future up in a much different way.
I do feel like there's a change in the wind, right?
You told us about it. Red Flag Day.
No, that's funny. That's a good
You
one.
think that Flagstaff would just be right for a biking community?
No, I think it's
think
going to
so.
happen. There's more interest in safe routes to school. There's more interest in infrastructure. There's a lot of talk and momentum, and you can just feel it it's coming.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. I'm
We answer all your questions?
done. Thank you.
You feel like you're prepared to?
Are you guys ready?
Yes.
Let's go ride.
Thank you for coming. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Are you Adam?